Hi, fifth graders. Today's story is called Top to Bottom, Down Under. Down Under means Australia. This week we are focusing on Ted and Betsy Lewin and how they write and what they write about. Here's a picture of the books that they have published, and we're going to be reading most of them. So let's get started with this one, Top to Bottom. Stop the video whenever you want so that you can reread it or re-listen to it or understand it in a better way. So this is just a little bit of information over here on the left-hand side that you can read on your own. Top to bottom, down under. It starts us out with showing us a map of Australia and some of the different animals that you could find around Australia. Down here it shows a map. Again, maps are important for us. They're a text feature, which means a part of a text that's going to help us understand things about what we're learning. And this says that Australia is almost the same size as the United States. If you took this continent of Australia and placed it on the United States, that's how big it would be. In Australia, there's a funny little animal that has a bill like a duck and a tail like a beaver. It has venom like a snake and lays eggs like a bird. There's a bird that lives in a hole like a mole and swims like a fish, but it can't fly. There are animals that hop on feet nearly the size of skateboards and carry their babies in their pockets. There are lizards that run on 2 feet like a human, and crocodiles called salties with teeth like a T-Rex. Some of these animals are found nowhere else on Earth. We've come more than halfway around the world to see them. When it says we've in a book, or I, or referring to themselves, we want to stop and think, who's the narrator of this book? And at this point, it would be Tim and Betsy. They are our authors. So it says we've come more than halfway around the world to see them. At the top is this section. I think maybe, in my head, I think, I wonder if the next section is going to be called In the Middle and at the bottom. It's what I tend to think. We're here at last in the land down under, so called because Australia lies below the equator in the southern hemisphere. On the way, we lost a whole day in the middle of the ocean, crossing the international date line. And the seasons are reversed. It's fall here and springtime at home. Australia is so large from the top to the bottom that it's hot in the north and cold in the south. It's also said that when you flush the toilet, the water swirls down in the opposite direction than it does in the northern hemisphere, where the United States is. And then in parentheses say, it doesn't. So it's just a myth. Now that we're totally confused, we leave for Kakadu National Park, one of the wildest, most remote means far away from everything, beautiful places anywhere. The Aboriginal people, and if you see the word original, that helps you understand that an Aboriginal person is somebody that's lived in that area forever, that their ancestors, their families may have been there before colonists were ever out and roaming and discovering things. So Aboriginal means like the original people of that area. The Aboriginal people of the Alligator River region have inhabited this area for more than 30,000 years. That's more than 25,000 years before the pyramids were built in Egypt. The park is 7,453 square miles, the size of Connecticut. At the campground, we set up our tent next to the "Danger! Crocodiles, watch your children and dogs" sign. We curl up in our sleeping bags, not sure what day it is, or time of year, or why crocodiles only eat children and dogs. We are resting up for our first trip to a billabong. So they throw in a little bit of humor here. Do you think the crocodiles would only eat dogs and children? What if a cat wandered by? Would it eat a cat? So again, the author threw in a little bit of humor there. Yellow water billabong. Our skiff glides out into the yellow water billabong. And I look at the pictures and I think, I wonder what a skiff is. It glides out into yellow water billabong. And when I look at the picture, I think a skiff means a boat. A backwater lagoon is what the yellow water billabong. The comma, I call that a magic comma, What comes behind it's going to explain a little bit. Let's go back and start from the beginning. Our skiff glides out into yellow water billabong, a backwater lagoon. The Aboriginal word billa means water. The bong part is anybody's guess. The tiny yellow snowflake lilies that carpet the water in the wet season give this billabong its name. Lilies don't really carpet the water, but it appears like, think about our floors when we put carpet down, it covers them. So that's a word that they use to describe what that would look like. So I think that there would just be tons of yellow snowflake lilies and they cover all of the water. Islands of pandanus palms, freshwater mangroves, and tall paperback gum trees fill the landscape. Jabiru storks, 5 feet tall, and plumed ducks stand guard. This is a paragraph that has a lot of new words in it and a lot of things that aren't familiar to us. I, as a good reader, am going to go back and make sure I understand what I just read. Islands, I know what an island is, of pandanus palms. I'm going to guess that this area right here might be a pandanus palm. Freshwater mangroves. I know that mangroves are those roots that grow on the sides of the bank sometimes, and I can see the birds are standing on it. Tall paperback gum trees. Maybe this is a paperback gum tree. Did you know that gum comes from trees? A Jabiru stork, 5 feet tall, and plumed ducks stand guard. So they're just watching as the skiff goes across the water. We searched the banks for big salties. We were introduced to salties on the other page, and that's an alligator. Remembering not to drag our fingers in the water. Don't let the word salty fool you. Salties and, I have to see how to say that. Estuarian. I had to look that up in the dictionary. Estuarine. Estuarine crocodiles can live in the fresh water of a billabong as well as in salt water. Fishermen pass in search of giant barramundi, a fish that can weigh up to 200 pounds. Different animals. A lotus bird looks as if it's walking on water. Actually, it's walking on lily pads. If its chicks are threatened, the male lotus bird scoops them up under his wings and carries them to safety. Finally, we see a big salty, the same color as the bank. It's about 15 feet long, bigger than our skiff. Its entire body rests on the bank except for its nose, which is underwater. The croc, neither moving nor breathing, has shut down. They put that in quotations to help us realize what that means, that it's a word that's not exactly right. The breathing is shut down, and it's going to tell us. A crocodile can maintain a heart rate of 3 to 5 beats per minute for an hour or more. So our heart beats like 60 beats a minute. So that crocodile acts like it's like dead. It shuts down and its heart barely beats so that it's not moving. On land, salties can run as fast as 15 miles per hour. So if a salty chases you, either run 16 miles an hour or in a zigzag fashion. Salties can't turn fast because of their tails. Never run in a straight line, especially if you can only run 14 miles an hour. We go deeper into the paper bark swamp. The water is choked with soft green weeds. A croc caught a 30-pound barramundi and held onto it for 2 days until it rotted. Now the croc lurches half its length out of the water, shaking its head violently from side to side. Splash! Chunks of rotten fish go flying. We're soaked and we're stinking of fish. If you have never smelled a rotten fish, consider yourself lucky. Rotten fish are the worst. Oh, they're terrible. Time to move on. we see a strange movement in a tree. It's an olive python. Close by, a flycatcher sits calmly on its eggs. The python is swallowing another snake that is lighter in color, but the prey holds on tenaciously to the tree. Tenaciously. Do you think that that other snake that's getting eaten is going to hold on tight or loosely? And that's what tenaciously means. Hold on tight. We watch, spellbound. That means they just can't take their eyes off it. They're just staring. Finally, the lighter snake lets go, and both snakes fall through a thick spider web, swinging upside down like a gross or grotesque pendulum. The flycatcher dreamily waits for new life to appear as another life slips away. Means the snake got eaten, but this bird's just waiting for her eggs to hatch. Dense strands of pandanus line the banks on their stilt roots. Aboriginals cut the leaves into strips, roll them, and weave them into ditty bags, which they use to carry just about everything. Watch out! Our skiff has drifted towards a freshwater mangrove or itchy tree. If you come in contact with the grub on the underside of the leaves, you will get itchy all over. Whoops! A big salty with enormous choppers sits so still we almost miss it. The salty is yellow-green in color, newly arrived from the ocean. The longer that crocodiles are away from salt water, the darker their skin becomes until they are as dark as the color of the Billabong bank. What a bonzer croc! That would be the way they would talk. Bonzer croc! A big monitor lizard called a goanna swaggers by. Two monsters from the Jurassic era. We start the engine and leave the old fossils to themselves. The landscape ahead turns into dream time. The black water is framed by pandanus and great high strands of Arnhem bamboo. No one knows how the bamboo got here. The Aboriginals tell Dreamtime stories or creations to explain its appearance. As we sit quietly in this grove of Dreamtime bamboo, we think about how the Aboriginal people have always lived in perfect harmony with this land. So they've lived here. This is their normal. Where Ted and Betsy, it's not their normal. They are seeing things that are just so fascinating. But they think about the people that have lived here for a long, long time. They're really getting into the story or getting into the place where they're at. The next day, we leave camp in the cruiser. I'm going to think that's a car or a Jeep. On either side of the road, vast yellow-brown floodplains are punctuated by blackened, newly burned stretches and bright green growth underwater holes. The sky is dark gray, heavy with clouds. A dingo crosses in front of us and lies down in a fresh burn, head flat on the ground. The rest of the pack appears in the tall green grass. Two whistling kites sit nearby on the rotting carcass of the water buffalo. Other kites circle and wheel in like vultures, trying to buzz them off. A crow joins in the confusion. So I'm going to think the kites that it's talking about is a kind of bird, maybe here, because a kite wouldn't just do anything on its own. The kite that we know. Now the dingo nearest us tugs at the buffalo. So I'm going to say right in here, with everything it's got. It rips a shred of skin and meat loose and it bolts it down. For 5 minutes, the other dingoes share the carcass. Suddenly, a ferocious fight breaks out. The dingo near us turns, drops its hindquarters, lays back its ears, and bares its teeth in a hideous grin. The pack attacks and then gives chase when our dingo flees. No one returns to the carcass, not even the crow. Now we're at the bottom. So I was wrong. There wasn't an in the middle, but we were at the top and now we're at the bottom. Now we're flying over the red center, mile after mile of wild, empty red land. We're on our way to Flinders Chase National Park on Kangaroo Island, home to almost all Australia's wildlife, except dingoes. Kangaroo Island is a green jewel in the cold southern sea, larger than the state of Rhode Island. In 1802, it was discovered by Captain Matthew Flinders, a young British explorer. It was uninhabited then. It now has a population of almost 4,000 people. In the late afternoon sun, kangaroos and Cape Barren geese graze on the broad green meadow. Flightless emus walk by, striking poses with each step, red-eyed and haughty. All are protected and unafraid of humans. So when it says that it strikes a pose, I'm going to look down here in this left-hand corner and think that it's striking a pose. A pose means that we're posing for a picture. And if an emus strikes a pose, it means that it's stopped and it's looking around to make sure that it's not in danger. That's what striking a pose would be for that. A Kangaroo Island kangaroo and the tiny Joey in her pouch graze the short grass. It's as if Mama has two heads. The kangaroo on Kangaroo Island are darker, stockier, shorter limbed, and slower moving than the kangaroos on the mainland. So this is kind of a different breed of kangaroo on this island. Koalas hang in the tops of the rough bark manna gums koalas hang in the tops of the rough bark manna gums like great bunches of soft furry fruit. One tiny chocolate brown baby clings to its mother between her belly and the tree. Koala means no drink in the Aboriginal language. That evening, as we eat our rice laced with Tabasco sauce, 4 kangaroos and a brush-tailed possum invite themselves to dinner. The possum sits on our plates. Mama kangaroo intercepts our food on its way to our mouth. Intercepts means reaches in and grabs it. Just like in football, intercepts. Another grabs our shirt fronts and rocks back onto her tail, freezing up every very strong clawed feet that could kick your guts out. She can have our tucker, no worries. That little star means that's a word that's used in Australia. So like there, our supper. And I thought this was really a cute little section down here. It says, early explorers asked the Aboriginals the name of the jumping animal. They answered kangaroo, which means I don't understand your question. And it stuck, and now we call them kangaroos. The next day, we spot a little thorn bush walking across the road in broad daylight. An echidna. I had to look that word up too. An echidna. There are only 2 kinds of monotremes, or egg-laying mammals in the world. The echidna and the platypus. Sensing our presence, the echidna stops and tucks its long nose under its body. Its spiky back prickles in the air as it starts sinking into the ground. We back off, afraid that if it keeps digging, it will disappear before our eyes like Rumpelstiltskin. If you don't know the story of Rumpelstiltskin and how he disappears, then I have linked a video on our homepage. Then the little thorn brush rises up out of its hole and waddles off into the scrub. Remember how we used to call it, we've heard it called the bush. Now we've heard it called into the scrub. Rocky River is a swift-moving stream full of great gum trees, trunks, and long fan-like water weeds. Moss grows everywhere. It is home to other egg layers, the platypus. In the pouring rain, we watch the surface for the rush of bubbles that will signal its arrival. When we realize that water striders send false platypus signals, so do leaves and raindrops. Finally, at dusk, not 5 feet from us, a sleek little beaver body and soft leather bill pops up to the surface. Here's the platypus. When its nictitating membranes are shut, its eyes look like yellow headlights. When its membranes are open, we see black shiny eyes. Plop! The platypus works its way underwater. Perhaps it's probing and nuzzling with its sensitive bill, feeding on insects, grubs, and small fish, storing them in its cheek pouches. It slides up into its burrow and it's gone. What luck seeing both monotremes in one day. Not far down the coast from our campsite, there's an enchanted place called Seal Bay. The beach and surrounding dunes are littered with Australian sea lions sleeping on blankets of black seaweed. Silver gulls in attendance. We walk out on the beach expecting all the sea lions to flee. Instead, they continue to sleep, scratch, and yawn. Wonderful whiskered creatures smelling of fish and the sea. Right here is an alliteration. They use two W words, wonderful and whiskered. A big female glumps towards us, mouth wide open. Is she greeting us or charging us? She nuzzles, bites, pushes, and barks at every other sea lion on the beach. They look at her wearily, yawn, and lie back down as she waddles into the sea. They're very lazy sea creatures. We lie down on the warm sand in the midst of the herd, 500 strong. The sea lions are about 10% of all their kind that are left in the world. Huge bulls sit as solid, the man is called a bull, as solid as pyramids, noses pointing to the sky, eyes closed, dozing. 2 young bulls joist on a field of seaweed. They shoulder and push and bite each other like puppies. When they tire of the game, they too doze off. All this yawning and sleeping is catching. Before long, we are fast asleep too. It is very dark, cold, and windy where the fairy penguins live. We pick our way carefully down the jumbled, slippery, lichen-covered rocks to the shore. The sun sets, and the rocks take on monstrous shapes, sea serpents, gigantic toads, and lizards. Over the sound of the sea breaking on the rocks, we hear yapping and laughing. A crowd of fairy penguins, like little people dressed to the nines, waddle out of the sea after a long day of fishing. It is our last night in this wondrous land. As we nestle into our sleeping bags, we think about the long trip home. Fall will change back into spring, and we will pick up the day we lost in the middle of the ocean. And now we dream about those little people out there in that cold black sea, laughing their hearts out. And then here are just some facts about the different animals in the book that we just read.